From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm Vasilios, that's Sean Fazan. Remember to like, subscribe, rate, and review. You can find us wherever you listen to and now watch your podcast on our brand new YouTube page. Sean.
Hi, how are you? Happy
well.
Hump Day, midweek here at the time of this podcast production. But before we get started, as Sil said, be sure to like, subscribe, rate, review. Go to the YouTube channel, the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast YouTube channel. We've gotten a good response. We're only about, 12 or 13 videos in, so still in our infancy, if you will, in our YouTube space. But nonetheless, the growth has been nice, and we feel like we still have quite a few levels to get to over there. So be 100%. Sure to help us out with that. And also, if you want to send a question, be sure to do so with the Final Word feature on the Final Play app. Okay, Sil, back to the task at hand. This production, this podcast. Here we are on the Saints calendar, a little bit of an in-between week, if you will. At the time of our last podcast, we were wrapping up a pretty busy week last week when you talk about the Saints adding Foster Moreau. So many angles to that story, and obviously health, local, but football-wise, made a lot of sense, and he'll be on the field very quickly, at least according to everyone we talk to. The schedule, which everyone lives and dies by in this area when it comes to fall, that came out. And, of course, Saints rookie minicamp, which I was there. We talked a lot about that in the last podcast. But this week, a little bit of an in-between week from a busy week last week to a busy week or a busy part of the NFL offseason calendar begins next week. So that's what we're going to talk about because, frankly, Sil, all the signings, all the contract restructures, all the draft picks, all the wheeling and dealing, all the moves you make, all that stuff that we love to talk about is for one reason. It is to improve the product on the field. In OTAs, it's the first time we get to see that product on the field. So with that in mind, I'm going to just give a few things that I look for, that I will be looking for in this year's version of OTAs. They are voluntary, but still, I've always been the type, if you're a Saints player and you were on the team a season ago, you have now had, let's just say the offseason conditioning, the workout portion started sometime in April. You have now had 3 months off. You have plenty of time to have off. And if you are relatively healthy, I don't know how a lot of these guys would be chomping at the bit to just get back in the same city with their teammates, get back with their guys, and just get on the field and do what they do, which is play football together. I mean, that's what they do.
Yeah.
So I've always sort of looked at, yes, they're voluntary, but what else are you really doing? Unless there's some sort of business angle, which I totally understand. If there's a contract and there's a leverage play, that's certainly understandable. Maybe there's the club and the player have signed off on some off-season training regiment that both sides agreed to, and thus that player is not available for OTAs or not present at OTAs. That maybe is a quote-unquote excused absence, but I guess there is no excused or absences because they're not required at OTAs. But nonetheless, if it's just I don't feel like going, I don't necessarily think that's a good thing. And
no, I don't think so
ahead.
either. No, I was going to say, I agree with the training regimen thing. And, I mean, it could also be the fact that, you got the same coordinators that you did, or with the same offensive coordinator you did last season. And then, DA obviously still runs his brand of defense, so they won't be running installs like several other teams that have new coordinators and everything like that.
But there is, so this is all – we don't know yet what's going to happen, but there is significant change in the defensive staff in particular.
For sure.
But quite a few new coaches. And we bring this up because last year there were quite a few absences. There wasn't the participation that we had come to see in the previous regime. And if I'm not mistaken, the prior 2 years, there were no off-season programs. So, it was a little weird to see just kind of light numbers and the weird energy because, as I said before, there was a weird overhang from, the previous head coach into the new head coach. the new head coach, I don't think was quite comfortable yet in just rising and kind of taking over the team. They were still kind of in the mindset of the culture's built, this thing's going to steer itself. I'm just here to kind of guide it a little bit, as opposed to, no, you got to be the guy. Mm-hmm. And I think he figured that out later into the season, and I think that has now filtered into this off season.
What did we say a couple months ago?
What did we say?
This is DA's team.
This is now DA's team. And if you talk to DA, and I've been around him a few times this offseason, there is a quiet confidence building within the guy. He's not an outward bravado kind of guy. He's not like the previous head coach, but you can feel it. You can sense it. There's a little bit more comfort. There's a little bit more confidence. And I think hopefully there's a little bit more comfort in him stepping out in front and being basically the face of the team.
Yeah.
Face of the team. So when you ask what's the first thing I'm going to be looking for, it's going to be those attendance numbers. It really is, because I want to see, and hopefully this is the case, where the team has a high participation rate, upwards of the 85, 90% of the players here for off-season training. So that'll be the first thing that I look for. The next thing I'll be looking at, frankly, is, this kind of goes hand in hand with the attendance numbers, you have a new starting quarterback. This is not we had to kind of resettle and we had an injured quarterback last year. No, you have a new franchise quarterback in Derek Carr. Everyone knows it. The club made a loud proclamation. He is the guy. They gave him the contract worthy of it. The locker room rallied around it. They wanted it. So now this is his first chance to get on the field. So I want to see him. I want to see how he looks. I want to see the physical skill set. I want to see the arm strength. I want to see all the football things, the chemistry, that kind of thing. But I also want to see the vibe, because he's an energy guy. All reports and just the things you pick up on with Derek Carr is he's a conversation guy. He's an energy guy. He's a vibe with teammates kind of guy. He's a locker room guy. That should show up on the field. And that can show up on the field. And frankly, it didn't show up on the field last year because, if you recall, Jameis Winston was still recovering from an injury. He wasn't doing as much. So although he is an energy guy too, it was a little bit, he wasn't quite on the field doing everything. And they had Andy Dalton, who was brought here as a backup. Everyone knew that. And he's a kind of a veteran, not a rah-rah guy to begin with. So that's not to say Derek Carr is, but he's a little more vocal. But nonetheless, it's weird when the one guy that was supposed to be the starter isn't participating, the one guy that's a veteran backup is, and it can create just a little bit of different kind of energy. That shouldn't exist this year. That shouldn't exist with Derek Carr. So that's the first thing after attendance I am going to be looking at. I am going to be looking at just the vibe with Derek Carr and his new teammates and his new city with a head coach he knows quite well. There are other things that are interesting about this year's OTAs, and that is this. Every year I've been covering OTAs, you get there's 3 a week for like a 3 or 4 weeks stretch, and then there's minicamp, and you get to cover one. Every year I've ever done this, it's always been the availability was on a Thursday. This year, which is the last OTA of the week, they go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Right.
This year, the availability is on a Tuesday.
So
now,
the first day of
that would be the first practice of the week.
Interesting.
So, now look, this could be just conjecture on our part, but DA kind of alluded to it a little bit at the Saints Hall of Fame golf tournament. You'll be there for the first day of practice of the week as opposed to the last day of practice. I wonder if that now gives us a look at the highest chance of having the highest percentage of players at the OTA workout, because you know how it is. If you want to get the long weekend and the last practice is not managed, maybe I won't do that. And if we show up and we don't see as many players, then perhaps it looks like there isn't quite the attendance numbers. Where
that makes sense.
Earlier in the week, it's a Tuesday, you have practice the next day on Wednesday, you have practice the next day on Thursday. I think there's a stronger chance you would have a higher attendance rate. Hopefully, all the guys are there for all the practices, but we know how things go.
Yeah, so maybe some guys just want to dip early from practice too, and they don't want to stay around and talk to the media afterwards on Thursdays.
And also, some guys may not practice on a Thursday. Maybe,
that's true.
But I would always qualify what I would say last year is, look, I haven't seen, like, for instance, Demario Davis. I haven't seen Demario Davis yet, but he could have been there the days we weren't there because we didn't know. We didn't know. But now we'll get there early in the week, and I think it makes sense. And I think there's a little bit of strategy there by the Saints. Maybe it had something to do with their media department, PR department, which is smart. It's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to, maximize coverage, positive coverage for their program, and I think they understand the optics of that situations. But I hope this locker room feels the shift and they rally a little bit, because I do think optics will be important here, because as we said, this is DA's team, and I think a full locker room, a full participation could certainly go a long way in helping that. There are a couple other things you have to concern yourself with OTAs. There's going to be an injury or two that we don't know about that we're going to find out there.
Yeah.
Okay, so just prepare yourself for that. And usually it's an off-season cleanup where the recovery's taking a little longer, or maybe they're holding them back because they don't want to risk it. Maybe it's more of a lighter load. I wouldn't get too anxious with that or upset over that. That's just kind of par for the course. And also, and this is very important. And I try to always do this every year, but it has to be said. Be very, very, very mindful of the May/June superstar, okay? Because there's going to be someone, and it's going to either be a corner or a receiver, because we have to follow the ball, that's going to make a few plays, that's going to catch our attention, and we're going to talk about that player and maybe put them on our radar, and maybe we will throw them in a roster projection. But generally speaking, some of those players, or a lot of those players, they kind of fade once training camp gets here and once the preseason and regular season. I'm thinking of guys like Nick Toon. I'm thinking of guys like Emmanuel Butler. I mean, Adrian Arrington was always the guy that was next. It just never came around. And those guys all play wide receiver. Follow the ball. Follow the ball. That's just the way it goes. Linemen, I know I'll probably have to do a few radio shows talking about it. I hope I don't get a lot of lineman questions, because I don't rate linemen at many OTAs. It's not easy to do. It's not fair to evaluate them because they don't have pads on. And I just think it's just a chance for them to get out there and do some work. It's way too incomplete to get a full gauge on where the linemen stand. And even like running back, I've always had a hard time with, because of the you can't bring them to the ground thing. That's what a running back, it's breaking tackles. So how do you really get a good gauge on a running back? That's always been
no real
something.
Contact.
I almost got more out of watching running backs run routes at these things than actually running the football, for that reason, because it's easier to follow the ball. You're in one-on-one, or you're in a team setting, but that's the only thing you can really get a gauge on. Because, I mean, if they run an outside zone to the left, and he cuts up the field, and a linebacker gets a hand on his waist, they can blow the whistle, but would he have broken the tackle in a real game? Probably. Right. We just don't know. So that's why I'm a little whatever when it comes to running backs and linemen at OTAs. But nonetheless, I'm looking forward to it. I really am. I'm looking forward to this next phase. I really want to see I've been picking up on this confidence. I've been picking up on this optimism. I just want to see it on the field. And it doesn't have to be loud, rah-rah, loud, or, any kind of crazy motivational speech or anything. It's an energy you can pick up. And I'm the type, I'm more of an observant type. So I watch body language, I watch energy, and try to pick up on it. So hopefully we can come away with a good vibe when it comes to that. Before we get out of here, did you see the preseason schedule?
I did. And the preseason schedule, we're going to be carrying all the games on Fox 8. Of course, the first two will be produced by us. We'll be doing a pregame, halftime, and postgame show. And then the third and final will be produced by Fox proper.
Yep.
And so, we will catch those. The first one will be August 13th against the Kansas City Chiefs, and that'll be at noon. The second game against the LA Chargers will be at 6:05 right here on Fox 8. Mm-hmm. And then the third and final game will be at 7 p.m., again, right here on Fox 8, that one against the Houston Texans.
Interesting. All three Sunday games. I've never had that. That has never happened to the Saints, at least since I've been covering the team. Preseason games have always been on like a Thursday or a Friday or a Saturday, some on Sunday, but never all three on a Sunday. I don't know if that's universal around the league, but that's the first time I can recall that ever happening with the Saints. And, when that time comes, that'll be interesting to certainly watch. 2 home, 1 away.
Yeah.
Kansas City, Houston at home, L.A. away, and the L.A. Chargers that will be spending the week out there for joint practices as well.
Super interesting, though. The Houston Texans are also a regular season opponent.
Yeah, I noticed that. So I got to go back and look at the history there because I'm sure that's happened before, but I wonder if there's any kind of correlation between what happens in preseason and if there was any intel provided for their meeting in the regular season. A couple other notes. Cam Jordan, the first round, possibly former first round pick. Of course he was. The contract extension.
Yeah. Rumors.
That was interesting to hear about that. That Saints want to do, so be it. No problem with it. He's been durable. He's been productive. He's been criminally underrated.
Future Saints Hall of Famer.
I just would have thought going into his 13th season, it would have been a year-to-year thing. And maybe the Saints will let it play itself out and see what happens. But if they get an extension done before the start of the regular season, so be it. And then also I don't think we touched on this before, the first-round pick signing, Brian Brzee.
That's awesome, like not holding out any of these guys anymore. Like I know it was your final say yesterday on the Fox 8 Overtime show on Fox 8. And no, I totally agree with the sentiment that it's nice that we don't really have to bite our fingernails anymore to wait for these guys.
There was a time, thinking back to like 06 with Reggie, I think like even in 09 with Malcolm Jenkins, where it was a guarantee. If you were lucky if you got your rookie draft pick signed before training camp. Those days are long gone. These guys are signed up in May. It's a good thing. Mm-hmm. A, the money is right for a rookie that's never played. And B, honestly, you don't want to deal with that. You don't want to be missing time, missing 8, 9, 10 days of training camp just to get the business side ironed out. You want to be playing football. And Brian Brzee signed his contract. Only one Saints player left to not sign his contract, and that could change by the time you watch this podcast. I think it's Isaiah Flosky.
Yeah.
So, again, good vibes all the way around. So, hopefully it continues into May and into June and into training camp and preseason, regular season. So, but first things first, next week OTAs. That should be fun.
All right. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Remember to like, subscribe, rate, and review. Everything is appreciated. For Sean Fazan, I'm Vasilios. This has been the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. We'll catch you guys next time.